We've really got to work on your solo gliding there, bud. Toothless! You're pouting, big baby boo? We'll try this on! Oh, you feeling it yet? Yeah, you wouldn't hurt a one-legged.
Well, sometimes dragons are hard to train, JJ. You know what I mean? We don't just get one movie. We need a sequel, and as much money as we can get from this franchise.
Amen.
Amen to that. But you know who really could use this movie, JJ?
Who could use this movie, Grant?
Daenerys Targaryen. Holy crap, you haven't seen that Game of Thrones
No!
yet! Oh no! Spoilers!
It's not our problem that JJ is...
It's years behind Game of Thrones.
Is inept of popular culture.
Oh!
And television!
Well...
Hold on. We got a stranger in our midst.
I smell ginger.
Oh, what?
I see freckles.
Hide your women!
Hide your wives!
Who is it?
And hide your dragons!
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to introduce Ethan Lemke here. He's going to talk with us about... What movie are we talking about today?
We are talking about How to Train Your Dragon 2.
Yes, the sequel to the extremely successful film from 2010, I believe.
It took 4 years to get a sequel.
It took a long time.
I'm kind of surprised by that, but okay.
Masterpieces take time, Grant.
That they do.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it. This movie is way better than the original. In almost every single way. I'm going to go ahead and just throw that out there right away.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to just kind of blow our lid on it right away, but is this movie better than the original?
In my opinion, yes. I liked it very slightly better than the first one.
All right.
I agree. It was better than the first. Not in almost every way, like Grant said, but it was far superior.
I don't think it's a hands-down winner, but what do you think, John?
No.
What is your opinion?
I'm going to be alone on this one because
Really?
I love this movie. I think we're all going to really come on and say, "Oh, it's great. It's amazing." It is amazing. I still think the original is the better movie. But we'll get into it.
All right.
We'll get into it.
Okay. So this movie's about Hiccup. The kind of loser Viking kid. He's voiced by Jay... What's Jay's last name?
Barashal or something.
Barashal?
Barashal?
He has pretty much
Jay
like...
Basilis.
Pretty much Basilis. Who pretty much has the wimpiest sounding voice ever.
Yup.
I mean, that's what they cast him on was...
I just want to go out and say that one thing I just think is amazing about these movies. If you look at the cast, it's like, where's James Franco? This is like the cast and this is the end.
With Gerard Butler.
No, exactly. The world as we know it in the first film was dragons versus Vikings. And the whole point of the first film is about this one person who kind of understands both of them, bringing them together, and now they live in harmony. And what's great about the first one is it's really about this father-son story of this son trying to kind of gain the acceptance of his father while at the same time kind of, being who he is. But the second one is he's older now, and he's kind of realizing, like, well, maybe I don't really want to live up to my father's name. Maybe I don't really want to be the leader, because that's the main crux of the film is that what's the name of the Gerard Butler? Stoic.
It's pretty much the most amazing name you can come up with.
Which is his adjective is his name.
Quit being so stoic.
Stoic is going to step down, and he wants the hero of this was it Bard Burke, the hero of Burke, to be his son, which makes sense. But his son doesn't want to do that. He just wants to be like some liberal hippie just going around doing shit.
He wants to be pretty carefree. He knows that with leadership is going to come responsibility. He sees that like from what his dad does day in and day out, and he just wants to go explore and map the world and befriend dragons.
Yeah. So, but in this movie, he eventually, he kind of goes off, sees different worlds, and eventually he runs into like an actual threat. That like a guy where like Stoic's like, dude, this person is not a friendly Disney character. He actually kills people. But Hiccup is like, no, we're gonna be friends. I'm just gonna talk it out with him, we're gonna be buddies. And somewhere in all this, he meets up with his mom. And that's not really a spoiler since it's like in the trailer.
No, that's in the trailer.
I mean, so, and all of this is pretty much like a much bigger scale sequel than just just this island. It really expands out.
This is the story about, in the original we discover the world of the dragons, and then this is, I think, a story that really kind of opens up the parameters of what that can mean. Especially seeing like, okay, well, if this was one case of this is how the relationship between dragons and Vikings went. Well, what if it went a completely different direction? That's what the villain is, which I think is actually pretty interesting.
Who voiced the villain? Do you know?
I don't.
It sounded so familiar that I couldn't quite get it.
I personally, I mean, I don't know who voiced him. I thought he was pretty good. I think he was actually a pretty well written villain, in my opinion.
It surprised me because, like, in the first movie, there really wasn't a villain, so to speak. You know what I mean? It's just more like you said, a father-son acceptance story. Where this one, like, kind of takes about 10 minutes to start going into darker territory right away. It doesn't waste its time with that. And I absolutely love that idea.
I like what they do in this film. With the first film, it's all about Hiccup finding out how to treat dragons and ultimately befriend them. In this one, we start to see this villain that we keep talking about. He has his own methods of controlling or using dragons or with his relationship. And you can kind of see the clash between Hiccup is like, no, it can be done this way. And this villain just absolutely refuses and wants to use it to conquer other, Viking people.
Well, conquer the world.
Yeah,
I mean, but what's interesting about this villain is that, and what's good about this villain is that he is not evil for evil's sake. There's a reason. I mean, we're not going to spoil it for him, but they actually put the thought in to make this character actually have some depth. What I think is what's great about these How to Train Your Dragon films is that they do that with everyone. Like, every character here is not just sort of wasted. They all have some sort of edge to them that makes them a little more interesting.
Okay. I'm going to have to disagree with you, and I'm going to say one of the very few things I like about this movie, or don't like about this movie, is that I think some of the side characters are pretty dumb and unneeded.
Who?
Like,
Who?
Well, we're talking about, like, there's that, like, the twins and Jonah Hill's character and whatnot. They never interact, and they never really do anything.
You're going to go into one of my complaints about this film, that I think that's why the first one's better. Because in the first one, those characters work. Like, those characters are brought up alongside them, and you see, like, okay, they have, they are sort of as a comic relief, but it's also, like, you get to see them grow along with Hiccup. And I actually really enjoyed them in the first one, because they actually had that purpose. And this one, I feel like the film felt compelled, like, well, we have to bring them back, because everyone likes them. But they don't really give them anything to do, especially Hiccup's girlfriend, which is it Ygritte? Or what was her name?
No, Ygritte is from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, I want to say it's a tough Russian name.
Russian.
Astrid.
Okay, Astrid. I think she got a really short end of the stick on this. She didn't get.
But all those side characters never really interact with Hiccup. Like, they really, in the overall scheme of things, they're just there for some dumb jokes that don't quite land. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we're all hitting on this person. And I think the biggest, like, example of that is the guy who Jon Snow voices. This, like, guy who they, like, introduce, and...
Kit Hamilton, yeah.
Yeah, Kit Hamilton, I'm sorry. Jon Snow. This guy who they, like, introduce, and, I mean, you see him right away, you're like, well, that could be a fairly interesting character. And then you just don't really ever get much from him. And at the end of the movie, you're like, well, you're just kind of shooed into this movie at this point.
I actually I disagree with that. I think the new characters they bring here get their screen time fine. I think those guys, like, okay, that worked. Kit Hamilton's character, like, he starts out, I'm the bad guy, and then he kind of has, a change of heart, obviously. To me, it's the characters that are recurring, that these very minor characters, that they're kind of just drug along to the film. And you're right, they're just kind of there for jokes and kind of to be the punchline of the film, but they never have their own moment, which is, I can't really blame the film for not, like the film shouldn't have taken the time to just, like, focus on having these characters have arcs. They shouldn't have done that, but I feel that the film just shouldn't have them in the first place, because they do feel underused.
Yeah, definitely. But at the same time, like, while their humor didn't quite work for me, and they kind of felt like they were just shoot in just, for maybe to get some cheap laughs in, I actually think this film in general still had that little humorous touch that you saw in the first one. Like, I
thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty funny movie.
I enjoyed the more adult humor found in this movie that was not in the first one.
But Ethan, that's the big thing why I love this movie. Is not only do we get humor, but it's also a darker story. Like, I mean, it goes to some pretty dark places, yet it still, like, manages to keep this awesome, like, thing that, like, this little theme of, like, awesomeness that it has.
Everyone can be happy with friendship.
It can, but then it's able to, like, mix in some, like,
right.
And I'm not going to spoil this, but, I mean, it's not, like, the first How to Train Your Dragon is very much a friendship and father story. This one definitely goes into some places that honestly surprised me. Like, I was legitimately like, wow, you really did that. Wow, okay.
See, like, that's what's great about this film is that you go into it thinking it'd be like, oh, well, love conquers all. Like, that's the theory, that's the theme of the story. But this story actually sort of challenges that notion of like, well, I mean, love usually conquers all, but some people just want to watch the world burn. Like,
Yes, Alfred.
I don't know. I think this film, like, I like these films because they never take the easy road when they're talking about something, which I think is very mature in these writers.
You talked about, like, when we saw Maleficent, if I'll ever say that word right. You talked about when we saw that, how it was almost like speaking down to children. Like, here's a typical fairy tale and whatnot. To me, this almost elevates it. Like, it's kind of what you see in the really good animated films, where they really bring in some just darker themes of, like, friendship and, like, family and stuff, and it does it really well.
Yeah,
I really love that.
One of the things I really enjoyed was that gap of 5 years. You can see Hiccup grow, and with that, the story grew. He's not in the middle of being a 15-year-old teenager. He's older. He's more mature. He finally did hit puberty. And you can see that with his story, it gets deeper and more mature, which I really enjoyed. And as a young man who had to see this with his girlfriend, some of the off humor with the twins and the other people that was hit and miss for you two, I found it funny because I was sitting there with my girlfriend. So that kind of hit. It wouldn't hit for all, but it did hit in that moment.
Okay.
I agree. I can agree with Grant with you saying that maybe they might have been slightly underused and not as important as they were in the first film. But like Ethan was saying, I still actually really enjoyed them.
Okay.
When
I
they were
did
in the
too.
film.
They didn't have to be there. In the first one, you can see them grow with him, and you know from the first one that they're Hiccup's friends, and they're there with Astrid to help and save him. But for the most part, they're not in it, and I was okay with that.
Or maybe even them just still being kind of juvenile, just contrast with Hiccup
And-
becoming more
yeah.
You know,
mature.
that's probably a good point, because there definitely is a lot of, like, dark, like, you know, like, really mature moments, more mature moments, and that they do give you a chance to breathe, I guess. If that, it didn't quite work for me, but I can definitely see that in there.
Very well paced. I think you're absolutely right, Ethan, in Hiccup growing up, because in the original How to Train Your Dragon, this was the dilemma of a child, and that, you know, if it's 5 years later, he's a teenager, and the dilemma that Hiccup goes through here in deciding, you know, what do I want to be when I grow up? You know, that is a dilemma that I think every single teenager has to decide for, and I think that I'm glad that they didn't just keep Hiccup in this sort of juvenile state of mind. No, he's actually dealing with real things, and has to actually, you know, deal with his whole family now. This idea of abandonment from his mother, which, oh my God, those writers, they just try their hardest to, like, justify this mom not
Leaving her
being there, like,
I would
constantly.
agree. But I like that, like, aren't you mad at me, Hiccup? No.
No,
I'm not getting mad at you. But I actually think in general, I mean, I did just make fun of his voice, but I think the voice acting in this movie also is pretty much top, like, you know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
Like, you can definitely see, like, hear the emotion behind the voice, which is something I think I lose sometimes in animated movies.
Yeah.
It's not. It's kind of they hit a really nice line with it of it being doesn't take itself too seriously with the voice acting. It's actually, I think, it's fairly cartoonish, and just like in the dialogue itself, it's fairly cartoonish, but it's also delivered so well that it's still very captivating. So that's why I enjoy about these films so much is they never try to be something that's like Pixar trying to be beyond like an animated film. No, it really keeps that cartoonish style and emotion and tone to itself, which is really nice about it.
But I don't know about you guys, but I thought the animation of this movie
Was
was
beautiful.
really well done,
Oh,
especially
yes.
the scenes, and they nailed this in the first one too, where they're flying.
Yeah.
And you just see
Oh.
him and Toothless take off. I think those scenes are incredibly animated. And then I love, like, the faces they give Toothless. They're just so cute and adorable. I'm
Oh,
sorry. I
oh my
love
God.
them.
That brings me on. Okay, thank you, Grant. So, like, when I left that, I just couldn't stop thinking about how much Toothless reminds me of, like, my own dog, you know? Like,
Oh my God, yeah.
like, just the cutest little thing, you know? And, like, the mom, you know, is like, oh, this is your dragon. She kind of, like, feels it and just, like, finds the right spot. And he's just, like, you know, just
Oh,
rolling
that's
over,
me,
like,
that's
yeah.
me.
Or there's, like, a scene where Jon Snow's guy, like, the guy he voices or whatever, he's like, oh, what is this, like, sword thing? And he chucks it. And then a dragon, you can see, like, its head turn and go, like,
Goes
oh my
and
God.
gets it.
And just sprints and goes and gets it. And then about, like, 10 seconds later in the dialogue, he comes back, like, panting like a dog. And I just love that.
Even
Even though the dialogue was good enough on its own and like intriguing enough. They just added that perfect touch of the dragons.
Well, they got the dragons so perfectly down in here. Not only just the way that they act they do act like just loving dogs
Right.
and animals, and especially with Hiccup, not Hiccup, with Toothless. Toothless just works so perfectly, and you just love the shit out of him because he reminds everyone of their pet. Like, I've talked with several people about this thing, and it's like, oh my god, he's so like a dog. And you have other people like, no, he's a cat.
Yeah.
He's so a cat. And it's just like, I love that because they must have done something where it's like, no, this is the core of what a pet is.
Yeah.
He's like goldfish. And one other thing about these dragons, oh my god, the designs of these dragons are so cool.
Yeah.
All these dragons have, you can see their personality. You
Yep.
can see like what makes this dragon different from this dragon, and that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if I was to add just like one more thing is the movie theater I went to, obviously it had quite a few kids and families, and everyone loved it. Like all ages loved this movie from what I saw. You know what I mean? Like there were kids 10 years younger than me. There's me. There's even like everyone thinks this movie, from what I've talked to, is a great movie, and I think that all ages appeal is awesome.
Well, I almost honestly go on the idea that I think that this is Pixar's like masterwork. If they keep going,
DreamWorks.
I'm
I got
sorry,
it correct
thank
there.
you. Yeah. God, I'm just making everything up. This is DreamWorks like masterwork as far as like these films are hilarious, but they're also hitting on such an emotional level. I don't like.
Is this your favorite DreamWorks film series?
Yeah, I would say so.
Over Shrek?
Because
Easily.
Yes,
Over Shrek?
Yes, because
Easily
these films,
over
I
Shrek.
know.
these films, and including like with the second one, like they have these moments that are just like tearjerker worthy because they're so moving, and they just get what family is. Like they have these moments where just like they don't try to make it like just too like hammy, or they don't try to make it too like, I don't know, cynical almost. But I think the way a lot of films deal with family is almost too cynical. They just deal in a really heartwarming way. And yeah, this film had several moments that were just kind of like, yeah.
I'm surprised. I mean, just looking at Shrek 1, 2 versus How to Train Your Dragon 1 or 2, I might still be inclined to my Shrek, but that also could be childhood nostalgia playing.
That is totally up in the air for me. I thought that nothing could touch Shrek. And How to Train Your Dragon 1, I thought, oh, this is really good. And when I got out of How to Train Your Dragon 2, I was like, oh my god, I gotta really rethink what my top DreamWorks line of movies is. Because
look at these films, I mean, from the art style and the animation sense of it. I mean, these guys have a sense of scale, and like it is incredible. Like what I loved about the end credits is they just show concept art at the end credits.
Oh,
of How to
those
Train Your
were
Dragon 2.
amazing.
And
I didn't
you
even
just look
stay
at-
for that,
Oh, you just look
actually.
at it,
No.
oh my god, these guys are visionaries with the stuff that they're doing.
That's awesome.
And that's what's so great about those flight scenes is they not only just the way they film those flight scenes is so exhilarating and such a sense of speed and like altitude, but also just look at the background and like what sort of earthly structure is going in the background. It's just breathtaking.
yes.
And like me and JJ were talking a little earlier about, there's this one point in the film that actually kind of invokes a sense of dread and a sense of fear. Because it's like, it's mysterious and it's kind of like, oh, what's going on? I think it's amazing that this child's animated film was able to invoke that sort of feeling.
Yes.
And be brave enough to like know that they're doing that. I thought that was very, very awesome on their part.
With all this stuff we've been saying, let's just move on to our ratings here, because I feel like we've really just covered everything about why this movie is as awesome as it is. John, what do you give How to Train Your Dragon 2?
Well, I think this is another just absolutely excellent film. I loved that first How to Train Your Dragon, and I was kind of apprehensive about this one, but these guys, they just know how to deliver an incredible story. I still like the first one. Maybe it's just because, personal opinion. You could honestly go either way. I don't blame you guys for liking the second one more. So I'm just going to give this 4.5 stars.
Okay. JJ, what are you going to give this?
Yeah, I was thinking... I was wondering if I was going to give it that perfect 5 because I just loved it so incredibly much. And I think until further viewings, at which I can still maybe learn more, just kind of like grow with it, I think it's going to be a 4.5 for me.
Okay.
Very, very close to a 5.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I can...
Don't be giving away those 5s for free, JJ.
That's right.
We've never given... I don't think we've given one of those yet, so don't be the first one.
Okay.
Who's going to break first?
Oh, Ethan, speaking of which...
Ethan's turn.
I'm sure I will get an unbelievable amount of crap for this. But for me, this is an easy 5 out of 5.
There's no crap to be
You
given.
think
no
you can just
crap
come
to
on
be
this
given.
show and just
I
give away
do!
signs like they're nothing?
I do think I can.
Never see him again, folks.
Yeah. And I'm gonna go ahead and say that this movie, I think it's great for all ages. I think it's just a darker and more, almost powerful story, how they tell it. And I'm gonna say it's the best movie I saw this summer, hands down. So go see this. I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think it's absolutely incredible. And I'm gonna go as far as to say as I do think it beats the original in just about every way. But the original is also great, a very good movie upon itself. But to me, the sequel really does top the bar that was just set, and I think that's incredible.
As the only person to give this a 5 out of 5, I feel like part of that is because as a young man, 19, 20-year-old age,
Your girlfriend was making out with you during the movie.
no.
Oh, I didn't give it a 5. Like,
Not at all.
You're not toothless.
I was focused on this movie.
You know, toothless.
You all tongue.
I'm sorry, you can keep going.
That better be edited out.
Enough time for us to call this review. So, thank you guys for listening. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we're trying to phase away from SoundCloud a little bit. We're not willing to spend $130 to get more minutes. So check out our YouTube channel. It's called The Geek Bubble, so shouldn't be too hard to find. And have a lovely How to Train Your Dragon evening.
It's not Bubble and Geek.
Not Bubble and Geek,
Not
yes.
Bubble and Geek.
This is Burke. Life here is amazing. Dragons used to be a bit of a problem, but now they've all moved in.
Did I tell you that you look amazing today? Because you do.
And with Vikings on the backs of dragons, the world just got a whole lot bigger.